Welcome to the MCUniverse, where the Lorehounds, your guides to the multiverse and beyond. I'm David.
I'm Jean.
And I'm Elysia, and we'll be introducing you to the MCU's first trio of super space senoritas.
In this podcast, we're going to start off with our spoiler-free hot takes, and then we're going to do a roundup of MCU-related news, including setting the record straight on some box office issues and some updates on upcoming shows and movies. After that, we'll take a break, and then we'll get into our full spoiler breakdown of the movie and answer some listener feedback.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts about all things MCU. Email feedback to mcu@thelorehounds.com or head over to thelorehounds.com and use the contact form or record us a voicemail.
For ad-free versions of this and all of our podcasts, check us out at patreon.com/thelorehounds. I'll share more about our Patreon as well as our upcoming programming schedule at the end of the podcast.
Also, we'd be forever grateful if you could help us get more ears tuned into the Lorehounds MCUniverse. All you need to do is drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Apple Podcasts is especially helpful. Even if it's just a few quick words, we read all the reviews and they mean a lot to us.
And before we get started, just a quick spoiler warning. We'll of course be spoiling the Marvels, but spoilers for the rest of the MCU and Marvel Comics are also on the table.
All right, everybody, here we are. We have all seen the movie, and we've got a special guest. Marilyn R. Pukkila is jumping into the podcast. She had some things she wanted to share and say about the movie. She had a good time, and I think, Marilyn, this is the first time. You've podcasted with Elysia before?
No, this is my first time with both Elysia and Jean. So
what?
Oh my!
I couldn't be more thrilled.
What?
This is great.
That's
We're
shocking.
making history now.
I'm joining the big kids table. This is fantastic.
I said classing up the joint.
Yes, definitely.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Marilyn, thank you so much for joining with us. I hope, it's great to have you on board. I know we were constantly thinking about you and referencing you during the Loki stuff because there was so much Norse mythology and
it was fun.
Just a lot of really great stuff. So thanks for writing in all the emails that you sent us. That you and Abby were and Dork of the Ninjas were great with your feedback. So we really appreciate everyone who was offering their takes on a really extraordinary season of television. It was really
Absolutely.
good.
Indeed.
Yeah, they landed the plane, as we like to say. Good stuff. Well, we're here to talk about the Marvels today, and we're going to start off with our hot takes, spoiler-free, of course. So, Marilyn, as our guest, would you like to lead us off? What did you think of the movie?
I'd be delighted. Thank you. I thought it was fantastic. I haven't laughed so long or so hard at a Marvel movie or a TV series in a very long time, and it felt good.
Yay.
Yeah. It was good to have information on sort of the follow-up to Captain Marvel about what happened regarding Hala.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the weird bits was, a bit weird. But, it was amusing and fun. But another scene absolutely had me gasping for breath. I was laughing so hard. And again, frequently throughout the course of, a whole chunk of time. So that was a lot of fun. I thought that it was a superb use of 3 very different characters to uncover the emotions underneath the superpowers. It's just a really great way to see them bouncing off each other, but then they start revealing things that otherwise they might not have revealed. So that I thought they did that very well. The visuals were stunning, both the long sweeps and new planetscapes, and I liked also the conception of the different technical spaces, like Carol's ship and Fury's SWRD module, with a convenient donut design, which was really great when they were team tagging to fight the baddies. I thought that was a particularly excellent choice of design. And like Jean, I was wondering where Taisha was, but I was going to leave him to say that. But
no, I'm glad you brought it up.
I said it. Okay.
That's good. Yeah, I'm
I
happy
was
you
really
brought it
puzzled.
up. Where was Taisha? Come on.
Yeah. No explanation. That was weird.
Just on the phone? Like, come on. She was a big part of Miss Marvel, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I did wonder about that. Yeah. Maybe she was film.
Maybe, but give me something about why.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're about to have their first baby or something. No,
Yeah,
half a
tell me
dozen reasons.
something.
Yeah, did they even say, like, is she visiting family or something?
No.
It's like she didn't even
Nothing.
exist.
She was on the phone in like
Was she?
maybe
Oh,
2
okay.
scenes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he spoke
good.
to her on
He's
the
like,
phone.
I'm going into space, and,
Yeah, like
Completely missed that. Sorry.
that was certainly the low point for me.
Real quick reminder on Taisha, who is just in case folks just for anybody who's not fully in the picture.
Okay.
the wife of the brother.
Kamala's sister-in-law.
So Amir married Taisha and Miss Marvel, and we didn't get to see Taisha at all in the movie. And
Okay, so her brother's wife.
Yeah.
Got it.
So she, for such a welcoming family, a loving family, a close-knit family, for her not to be seen or even really spoken of, that threw me off a bit.
It was just weird.
It was.
Okay.
And that's really the only complaint I had about the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So what's your overall take?
It was such a cool time.
Yeah.
It was a really cool, fun, breezy movie, something that I really enjoyed. I loved watching the characters interact on screen. I thought there was several standout moments, several standout set pieces that they pulled together well, that maybe upon hearing and thinking before seeing the movie, that I thought, this could go in the wrong direction, but it really didn't go in the wrong direction. We'll get into those things as we talk a bit more, but I really enjoyed watching this movie. I thought it was fun. I think it was, Elysia, you said everything doesn't have to be Citizen Kane. Right. And
Thank goodness.
yeah, right. And I really, thought about that as I was watching this film, and thought about it when I left, and said to myself, you know what? This was really enjoyable. This was a really nice time to watch a movie and just, escape. And I think at its core, that's what, I want from a lot of the films that I watch. So this was really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
I literally laughed and I literally cried.
Oh my gosh.
There were a couple of times where the feels hit me really hard. There were times where I was just cracking up and I was having a great time. There were a couple of WTF moments for me where I was like, what is that? Oh, that's a little ex machina. There were some rough edges around the plot, some not great acting here and there, but none of it ever took me out. None of it ever eroded the foundations of the movie for me, such that, and I went with my spouse. We got a date night. We're out. I'm podcasting from my in-laws' basement today. In fact, we got the whole week off for the American Thanksgiving holiday, and my in-laws were like, "Yeah, go see the movie. Go have a date night." So great. So my spouse, who is not an MCU person at all, not opposed to the MCU, just not into it, just not her thing. She was like, that was a lot of fun. I had a good time. And so I kind of asked her, I said, well, what about this or what about that? She's like, no, I don't know. I don't know who those characters are. I don't know what that means. I don't care. None of that red yarn connectivity to all the other MCU stuff made a material impact. I think there was only one thing where it made a material impact, and that was on the ship, where some, we don't want to go into spoilers. Anyway, there was just one, and it was the same one that I had. But otherwise, we had a really fun time out at the movies, sitting in front of a movie theater screen, having a good time. The theater had about a dozen people in it. It's a small theater in this town where we're at. And I was surprised to see how many people were there. There were a lot more people there to see Trolls and the new Mockingjay, whatever, the new
Hunger Games.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it felt like a festive little outing, and everybody in the theater, when I walked out of the theater, some other people who had been chuckling and laughing. We kind of nodded at each other. We're like, hey, cool. You enjoyed the movie? I enjoyed the movie too. And it was that really great movie going experience. And so I think the movie on that level delivered. And it felt great. And it felt great to have a win for the MCU, for these characters. And like Marilyn, you were saying that the way that they worked together, the three heroines, it helped to illuminate internal motivations and emotions and that kind of stuff. It was great. And then something that I noticed at the end, in the sort of the grand finale of it all, was rather than a smash, destroy, kill the evil bad guy, it was a healing.
Yes.
It was a bringing together. It was a sealing of a breach. It was closure, literally closure, without being spoiler. And I was like, oh, this is a different movie told from a different perspective. But yet it still felt as epic and marvelly and big superhero, biff, boom, bang kind of stuff. But it didn't have to be, ending somebody. Instead, it was a resolution of things, and it was a coming together of things. So I think I really appreciated it on that level too. And I love I love the big bad. I forget her name, the actor.
Darben.
Darben, the actor.
Zawe Ashton.
She's great. I love her. I want more of her.
Phenomenal.
I didn't realize that she's Tom Hiddleston's fiance until
no way.
Yeah. He referred to her as his partner in one of the interviews. Yeah.
Yes, I saw that as well.
That's amazing.
I saw a picture of them like on a red carpet somewhere together. I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
That's very cool. Anyway, so yeah, I had a great time, and I'm really glad that this got made and finally got moved. Yeah, and you could see where they probably did some back of the room, edits to put things together and kind of stitch a couple blocks, but it never had a tone of being Citizen Kane, so it didn't matter. It was good. So I don't know, Elysia, where your thoughts at? Where your feelings at?
This is, I had a great time, and this is one that I'm going to watch at home. It's a nice, short, quick, funny pick me up. There's a couple scenes in particular that I would watch on repeats. One I really need an extended edition of. But I also feel like having seen it my first time in a theater on opening night enhanced that experience as well. Because like you said, David, it was just a really lovely communal theater experience,
monocultural experience.
Yeah, where we're laughing at things together and we're responding to other things together, and just having a good time, and it feels like you're bonding with the strangers you're sharing this space with transiently. It feels the movie overall, it feels connected to the overall MCU plot, which I think I've been missing a bit in recent movies more, and it feels like we're finally starting to move the overall plot forward for this phase. It also pulls together a bunch of comics. I think for me, there are certain things like what happens on that one planet that they go to. It just felt like it was directly a sequel to that comic, to that Captain Marvel comic. So it just felt more tied to the comics than a lot of other ones to me. And I was so glad that Kamala's family was just as enjoyable as in the show. I just want more of everything. I did notice the editing issues people mentioned. This is one of the only times I want to call for a director's cut, because I think they cut some of the weird stuff, and I love the weird stuff. So.
Okay.
And I think, there was an issue with the trailers, because the trailers, they started fun and on brand, but they got too serious. And I know I talked to some people who were scared away by the later trailers. Like, oh, why wouldn't like a fun body swapping movie? I'm like, well, that's what it is. Don't worry. Like, that's what you're in for.
Interesting.
Thank you for saying that, because I was so confused by the third trailer. I thought, whoa, did they rewrite this whole thing? This just looks completely different. So it was strange. I'm not sure why they did that.
They were trying to claw back they were concerned about positioning in the marketplace. And so
I think that must be it, David.
Yeah. But I think they just
think
fumbled
enough people wanted to have a good time.
Yeah. And I think that made them fumble it more, because.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
so
sometimes you don't count out to the loudest voices. Because the loudest voices sometimes are idiots.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there are a lot of idiots.
How packed was your theater, Elysia?
Yeah, I went opening night, so it was like, I think maybe there was some seats open in the front row, but as far as I could see, it was pretty full.
That's great. That's really good. It's nice to hear. And I think this is going to do really well on streaming. So and we're going to talk about some boxes. You've got some things to say, Elysia.
Yes.
Notes in the notes here, but I think it's going to do fine on streaming. I think it'll make its money back. I think it'll be a good addition to the canon. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be this box office thing, right? It's fine.
I think it's going to age well, though. I think, people are going to look back and be like, well, why are people hating on this film again?
Exactly.
Right.
Seriously.
Right.
Yeah, we were there on a Monday afternoon at 2:30, and there were like 2-3 dozen people there.
Great.
Wow.
That's a good,
for Central Maine, I was really surprised.
Yeah.
I was really surprised.
All right, let's switch topics here really quick. We always like to cover a little bit of MCU news because there's a lot of stuff in the news these days. So we're going to touch base on a couple of upcoming, some notes on some upcoming shows and movies. But first, Elysia, you got something to say. So let's bring it forward. What do you got to say?
Yeah, and I know Marilyn also has some stuff to add to it at the end too. But I think it's just there's something has to be said, of course, for the fact that I'm pretty used to the response that female-led superhero movies get by now. But the response to this movie in particular was particularly heinous, and I just noticed a lot of personal around me, but also just collectively out there. I think there's just a few facts that need to be set straight. So I just have to bring in some facts and figures here.
Please do.
So first of all, before we get into the numbers, I just want to point out that while, yes, Carol Danvers was made Captain Marvel in 2012, which is fairly recent, the first female Captain Marvel was actually Monica Rambeau, who was also in this film, who was named Captain Marvel in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, published in 1964, which is before most of the men complaining about a female Captain Marvel were even born. Yeah. So it just apparently it needs to be said that female superheroes existing does not take away from the still mostly male MCU projects. So I broke it down by phase and by, whether a movie was male-led or female-led. So we have in the first two phases, we had 6 movies per phase. Each one was all male-led. And yes, I know that Black Widow was in there and, and later Scarlet Witch, but they were not the leads. So then we get into phase 3. We have one movie that's female-led, Captain Marvel. And that's, of course, when this MCU complaining started. So one movie out of 11. So still more male movies, but there also happens to be one female. Now, phase 4 was like the max for, content being produced, everything. We had 12 male-led movies. So that's double phase 1s and 2. But also
that's incredible. Just in terms of the volume, that's insane. Yeah.
And of course, we can litigate whether it's a good idea to have that sort of volume. And that's another thing we've been talking about. But just, there are still more male-led superhero movies. There's just also female-led superhero movies. And, the other 2 phases aren't yet complete. But if there's about 30-something% of the audience is female or the movies is female, that's actually what's currently the percentage of the audience that's female going to Marvel movies. And if you stop telling women that these movies aren't for them, more will go, which means that you can make more money. They're saying the box office is low. For Marvel's, yes, it was a $47 million opening for the opening weekends, which is disappointing for Marvel. Let's put this in, let's compare this to other movies. It's not as disappointing as, sadly, Blue Beetle, which deserved better. It did better than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is an excellent movie. It's just a hard time for movies right now. And now, in the middle of the second weekend of this film, it's already at 120 million. So it's not like this is going to cost them a huge amount of money. I think that this one could have staying power.
So, and it's also at the end of this train of negative Marvel news cycles with previous films doing lower and lower expectations because not all those films were great. A terrible Secret Invasion. So it's suffering from what product was put out prior to it. So people are, not
Right,
flocking.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
People are bagging on the movie even before they give it a chance. Like I had that earlier. Like, oh, you liked it despite it being a terrible movie. Like, have you seen it yet?
exactly. So I love this. You did a whole chart here. You've got percentages and increases and differences. Did you do this from scratch? Did you build it all up?
Well, I knew that, like, I knew in my mind that there were still more male superhero movies, so I just had to put it on paper in front of myself.
I love the data.
But for the record, also, the current Rotten Tomatoes score is 62% for critics and 84% for audiences. So,
hello.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you think they're ever going to start calculating streaming viewers into all this? Because I really have to wonder if more and more people are just waiting till they can stream it.
Yeah, the problem is that the streamers are very reluctant to share their data, which is one of the big issues in the recent strike negotiations.
Imagine that. Imagine my surprise.
Well, and this is where we've fundamentally shifted from being an entertainment production economy where ticket sales meant butts and seats, right? Mm-hmm. And you a product was delivered, it was given to this many people. Now it's this opaque tech world, and it, when you have publicly traded companies and they're trying to present to the shareholder and shareholder value versus the entertainment marketplace, it's a completely different value proposition. They have no incentive to release those numbers because they need to look good for a stock market return because they're a tech company now. They're not entertainment companies now.
And I know the movie theaters are hurting, and they're trying all kinds of ways to bring in more people. The expansion lounger seats with hot and cold. I hate this heat warming thing. I just hate it. It's just awful. Plus, you're supposed to select your seat online.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have reserved seats. That just is so strange to me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it now because
even though it's normal in a lot of other.
Yeah.
Well, there is that. I mean, I do have my favorite seat. I like to be able to reserve it. But on the other hand, I want to be spontaneous about this. I don't want to have to, go in online. Not that it's a problem in my Central Maine mega theater. I will get a seat for just about anything as long as I just don't go on opening night or whatever,
Jean, do you have any thoughts or takes on this question of female superheroes and
it's all BS. It's all BS. And I'm glad that Elysia broke it down in that way with the numbers, because at the end of the day, these are people who don't want to see, women, who don't want to see Black men or women, who don't want to see Latino men or women, Muslim men or women, Asian men or women. They don't want to see trans people. They don't want to see anyone who identifies as gay. They don't want anything but a cisgendered white man in these roles. And to that, I say, you know what? I'm not surprised that this was the type of reaction that we got leading up to this movie. I'm not surprised at all.
Mm-hmm.
What Sadly. I am disappointed in is that there are far too many people who seem to want to take on this role and give it and make it as if it's valid.
Mm-hmm.
These are not valid arguments that people are having.
Yeah.
Right. I don't subscribe to that. I have to, argue my points with racist and misogynist.
Well, it's also
because it's not. There's nothing to be gained from that.
But they come and find you. That's the thing. Is if you don't want to watch this movie, don't watch this movie. That's fine. Like I really don't care what you watch. But just let me have my joy. Don't come finding me on social media to everything. Every positive opinion I'm paid for, and I don't know anything. Fake geek girl, blah blah blah.
And these are. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
We're having a remarkably similar conversation in the Tolkien universe of, you know what, folks? The books are still on the shelves.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't like what you're seeing, don't watch it.
Yeah.
And as Elysia says, leave the rest of us alone to enjoy the exploration, to enjoy the differences, to see ourselves mirrored in a universe that we have long loved and cherished, but, felt kind of on the margins of. And inclusivity doesn't mean you are excluded.
Exclusivity, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's a scarcity mindset. That's absolutely. A mindset of that there's not enough to go around. And so you have to sort of go into a might makes right style dynamic, which is not the reality.
No.
The reality is there's plenty of entertainment space. And, if the studios recognize, the NFL recognized it. The NFL share of women viewers, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, went super sky high because the NFL started caring about garnering women viewership and started making stuff available in marketing in a way, and their business grew, and it didn't exclude a single man from any of that.
Right.
But you see, if your arguments are based on emotion, all the logic and numbers in the world aren't going to mean
Yeah.
It's just thought. So as Jean said, don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy.
Right, but
unless they come after you as they have been on Elysia, and something needs to be done. Yes,
exactly. And I'm glad that you did that. And this is conversations that I've had with David from when we first started to commiserate around these stories. Is that being a young Black boy, being a young Black man, being an adult Black man, I often did not see myself in these stories.
Yeah.
I never once thought these stories were not for me. And that's the position that I had to take in this Western culture that we inhabit.
Definitely.
I didn't see anyone who looked like me, aside from maybe Lando. Mm-hmm. And Lando's not even one of my favorite characters, right? But,
you don't like a cape? Roguish for you.
I think it's strutting more.
Yeah. I love Billy D, but Lando's not my guy. But definitely. I didn't see anyone who looked like me, but I never once thought that I couldn't be. And for someone who has had an entire lifetime of viewing people who look just like them and imagining themselves in these roles to now come to terms and say, hey, this doesn't feel right because this isn't what it should be, kick rocks.
Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't look like me anymore.
Right. Kick rocks.
Yeah.
You still have your superhero that looks like you. They don't all have to look like you.
They haven't disappeared.
Yeah.
Kick rocks.
But it's it's also about how expectations are set. I had a conversation with a male friend one time about Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman. And he said, I just think Wonder Woman was so much better because she was so emotional. You could see she was so gutted when this or that thing happened. But Captain Marvel, she never showed any emotion at all. And it took me a minute to figure this out when I think of all the scenes, with Maria and Lieutenant Trouble and all this sort of thing. And, what I came to the conclusion was, look at their two upbringings. In story, Wonder Woman was brought up in a culture in which women express themselves fully and completely, emotional, etc. It wasn't labeled good or bad. It was just part of being human. And so she had that solid foundation from which to move. And so there was no question but that she would express emotion. Mm-hmm. Carol Danvers, her struggle as a young girl growing up, and then she goes into the military, which is completely not about expressing emotions, unless it's anger. And then she gets kidnapped and taken to Hala, and yet another militarized society in which she's being told your emotions are a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, is she really going to emote all over the place with that? I really don't think so. Exactly. It could get her attacked, it could get her killed. It definitely would get her punched up more. So she cultivated this demeanor and a little sass, to kind of punch back, if you will. But you see her with her, realizing she doesn't know who she is. And the acting was superb. It just wasn't the same thing. Now, I also got to say that I really think that the gendered costume expectations had an awful lot to do with the perception. I mean, call up in your mind
Absolutely.
the costume of Wonder Woman and the costume of
Oh, yeah.
Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
What is that coding in terms of emotional expression?
Or how Linda
Absolutely.
Carter was presented on all of that television that Jean and I probably watched a lot of. I don't know, Marilyn or Elysia, if you watched the old TV show in the with Linda Carter, but she was highly sexualized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Couldn't wait for her to turn into Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah. Well, and
where
somebody
in
else,
this last night on screen, I happened to see it last night, perfectly normal, basic human shaped costumes, nothing. It was great. It was like, I don't, it was just, it was appropriate. It wasn't overly sexualized. It didn't turn them into, their costumes didn't turn them into sexual objects.
Right. Well,
Right.
especially because Kamala she's, a Muslim character, and she is
Yes.
concerned with conservative dress. That's a theme from her TV show also. So,
And it's a theme in the comics.
mhm.
and yet, I was at a library conference in Seattle in 2014, and the guest speaker was G. Willow Wilson,
That's awesome.
the co-creator of the Ms. Marvel original comics and graphic novels, along with Sana Amanat. And she said that the two of them developed this character together, of course, and that they were expecting negativity from both anti-Muslims generally, but also from Muslims who disliked Kamala's portrayal and the absence of the hijab in particular. But Willow and Sana decided that there was to be no hijab for Kamala because most teenage Muslim Americans didn't wear it either.
Mm-hmm.
So they were thinking again about the audience and being able to see yourself. Now, there were plenty of hijab-wearing women in the series.
Like her
Yes.
best friend. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
her best friend, and they had an interesting conversation about that. So
Yes.
they treated it in 3D fashion, and I thought it was terrific.
Mm-hmm.
But even before the TV series came along, this was still a factor in the graphic novels. And let me just point out that Wilson's first graphic novel won in 2009 the top 10 graphic novel award from ALA. And then when the new Ms. Marvel series debuted in 2014, it also received the Hugo Award for the best graphic story.
Yeah.
So there's
Which is,
plenty of people out there who really appreciate this.
Yeah. And the
Absolutely.
Hugo Award is one of the biggest awards in fantasy.
It's the
So,
most
yeah.
prestigious award in
It's sci-fi
speculative
fantasy.
fiction.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
Well-
we have some other good news in the general Marvel universe. More
Everybody's
recent
favorite
updates.
space daddy.
Well, okay, I have to clear the record. There
Yes.
were a lot of eager tweeters who didn't quite read the Deadline article they were quoting. He is in talks to potentially play Reed Richards. It is definitely far from signed in stone, but
The internet went crazy.
yeah, it could very well, I think, maybe even more likely not happen. We'll see. But it does seem like the other three castings of the Fantastic Four are confirmed, which is Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, who you might know as she played the younger Margaret in The Crown. Joseph Quinn, best known for Stranger Things, would play Johnny Storm. He was the one who played Eddie in the last season. And Ibn Moss Bachrach, he would play Ben Grimm, and he's best known from The Bear and Andor recently.
Yep.
So what do you guys think? What do you think of that cast, Jean?
I'm cool with it. I think I expressed earlier this week in our Discord that I don't want to see the same actors across franchises any longer. Like, Pedro Pascal is great, and I love watching him on screen. I don't need to see him play a character like Reed Richards, simply because he's Pedro Pascal and he's great on screen. I want new faces. I want new faces in these roles, and I think that.
What about the other three?
Yeah, I haven't watched The Crown, so I'm cool with that.
She's perfect as she's.
Yeah,
I think
I
everyone
think-
agrees. Yeah.
I think the other three are sufficiently not on my radar. Like, 24/7, 12 months out of the year. Like I'm anticipating, Mando. These are. I just don't want the cross, references and everybody doing the same characters. It's the same problem I have with what's your favorite character, David? What's his name? Oh
From
my
what
gosh.
property?
Mm-hmm.
In which universe?
Yeah, in what
Yeah, so which universe?
we cover so many, it's hard to keep track.
Oh my God, what is his name? He played. He was in the last X-Men. He played Apocalypse. Why can't I remember his name?
Oscar
Oh
Isaac?
my gosh, Oscar Isaac. Thank you. I don't need Oscar Isaacs in multiple franchises. Like, give me someone else. There are many thousands of aspiring and working actors who can portray these characters, and I would like to see someone step to those roles and embody those roles in a way that I don't expect, because I kind of expect how Pedro Pascal or any other well-known actor is going to behave, their movements, everything that I know about them intimately by watching these other characters. I'm going to go into this film expecting that. I don't want that any longer.
There's also a factor that it's really hard when I see Tom Hiddleston to not think Loki.
Yeah.
Although he is such a good actor, that he can get away with it because he's full range, from Shakespeare to nuts kind of thing. So
I don't.
But I wouldn't want to see Tom Hiddleston.
Serpent, I can say this. The Essex Serpent on Apple.
Yes. I watched that.
Yeah, I think he's totally different in that. I forgot that he was Loki. Personally,
right.
Yeah, he can do that, but that's he's up in the top tier, kind of.
Jean,
with years of experience.
When I say franchises, I mean specifically to the sci-fi, fantasy, superhero genres like the Star Wars and the DC and
Pedro
the
Pascal's
Marvel
and
properties,
except DC.
Right, right, and and I kind of want newness. I want a freshness to these characters because many of them we haven't seen before. Like we haven't seen Captain Marvel before, and that's why Brie, is with such a breath of fresh air during the Captain Marvel movie. You know what I mean? She brought something else that we hadn't experienced yet, and I kind of want that from.
But I think the other
going forward.
The other three I think they bring that. And I know not everyone is happy with Joseph Quinn and Ebon Moss-Bachrach. I don't know why the last one they wouldn't be happy with. Some people think Joseph Quinn's like too short or something. I don't know. But I think that
we already had this conversation about complainers are going to complain.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
They have such like an engaging energy on screen. I'm really excited to see them in these roles. And
so which role? Sorry. I was wondering which role Ebon Moss-Bachrach played in Andor.
He was the betrayer. What was his name again?
Yeah, in the second set of three when they were on Aldhani.
Sorry, spoiler for Andor.
Right.
Yeah. Oops. He was there. So anyway, well, fingers crossed. I mean, I can certainly see why they would want to pull somebody like Pedro Pascal.
Absolutely.
Star power, and it's going to bring a lot of.
And he's great. He's a hell of an actor. He's great at what he does.
Yeah, so. But I want someone who gets me excited about the Fantastic Four because I'm not.
What?
I know.
All right, so what's next on our list here?
Well, another casting, it seems like it's unofficially confirmed by Robert Kirkman, of all people, who was talking in an interview about Invincible and just like dropped that, Steven Yeun plays the lead character Mark in Invincible. And he was like, oh, yeah. And he was at a costume fitting to play Sentry in Marvel. Like, oh, okay. So that's confirmed. It was long rumored. So. Yeah.
What's just a really quick blip on who is Sentry, because I don't know that character.
It's such a great character because he has a split personality.
Okay.
That I don't want to really spoil stuff because
people also call him Evil Superman offhand, but I know that's simplistic.
I don't think he's a direct Superman, ripoff.
Okay.
I think Marvel has somebody else who is in Hyperion, but Sentry is a really complex character because he embodies both good and evil, and he's really. I don't know how they will make him as powerful in the MCU as he is in the comics. Okay. Because he's one of he's a powerhouse in the comics. It'll be interesting to see.
And this is part of the run up for the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, he'll be in the Thunderbolts. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Madam Web, we have a trailer for.
I know, Marilyn, you were excited about the Madam Web trailer.
It really drew my attention. Now, I don't have a clue who, what, where, how, why.
That's the important thing is that it draws. Yeah, exactly.
So well done. Whoever did the trailer, they earned their cut that week.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
So what's the intel on the title here?
Well, she's from the Spider-Verse. They're changing.
This is Sony. This is the Sony.
Mm-hmm.
Spider
This is on the Sony side. Yeah.
I find all that so confusing. Just give it up, folks. Just give it. Play nice.
Yes.
Find a big sandbox and play nice. Okay.
Look, Marilyn, if you can navigate the waters of the Tolkien IP and who has rights to what, it's about the same over on the Marvel side of things.
That's my Quaker secret superpower.
Okay.
But only for one universe. That's about all I have.
Enough. Yeah. Exactly. So, Elysia, you were talking about the
So they seem to be changing some things from the comics, but she's a clairvoyant, as you can see in the trailer, and I don't know what I should say about from the comics because maybe that's a spoiler about.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But Jean, I see you made a note about inheritors, and I was wondering the same thing. We talked about this also, that they were maybe teasing this group in the last into the across the Spider-Verse movie.
Across the Spider-Verse, yes. So it's it's a great Spider-Man Peter Parker arc that reveals that. I'll just say this really quick part that. The spider that bit Peter was not an accident. He was chosen, right? Huh. And that is the lore going on from this comic arc for Spider-Man. And within that, there are a whole other host of nice and juicy tidbits that we get that would be spoilerly. So I will refrain from going into in depth. But just
so Peter Parker is the Kwisatz Haderach?
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, that's another IP universe there.
No. Midichlorians.
Yeah. All of that. All of it. Yes.
Moving on. What if season 2?
But what I was just going to say about that. So all the women that you see in the Madam Web trailer, they're all different, like Spider Girl, Spider Woman, all different types of spider people, female peoples.
Yes.
And the reason why they're brought together might have to do with what Jean's talking about.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, looking forward to it. What if season 2?
All right, what if season 2?
So December 22nd, we found out it's going to debut, and then it's going to have one episode, it's going to be 9 episodes, 1 episode per day, daily through December 30th.
Right on the holiday season for us. So that's going to be interesting from a podcasting standpoint.
Did you check out?
We'll get innovative. We'll talk later and we'll figure out our strategy.
Well, I think you're going to say we kind of talked about doing a preview and then maybe the season as a whole and the start of the new year.
Okay. I've got some ideas. Maybe we can do some like really quick shot things, like drop some stuff really fast, and at the end, maybe we can bundle all those up or something. So we can talk.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you see the trailer? What was your reaction, David?
I have not seen the trailer. Very busy week prior to the holidays, work, life, all that kind of stuff. So I have not seen the Madam Web trailer, nor have I seen the What If trailer. And there was another trailer that was out recently that I didn't get a chance to see. And I'm like, I got a lot of watching to do, let alone any other shows.
And that's just the trailers.
Exactly. So they're pending. They're pending for me.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, I thought
I'm double as excited as season 1.
Yeah, I'm excited. I thought the first season was great, and you know, I'm excited to see what stories they're telling in this season, how they, you know, tie into the overall narrative. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So for anyone who doesn't know, these are stories that take place across the multiverse. So not in the sacred timeline in Loki speak, but in other timelines. But we have started to see them cross over with, you know, each other and with other timelines. So it seems like there's going to be some importance going forward. And they're just like a lot of fun because they're all, what if things just happened differently and everything was different?
Well, I think we could put a pin in that too, because we had the multiversal stuff, right, with Avengers and whatnot, and now we had something in this movie that touches on that. So, you know, they're laying a lot of work for us to have this multiple different kind of world.
This is the multiverse saga. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we'll go through the episodes. They're not 100% the ones we've talked about in previous, but we'll talk about it more in our season 1 preview.
Sounds good. Cool. Awesome. And last but not least, Wonder Man.
Not canceled.
Okay.
There was rumors going around that it had been canceled, and now we've heard that it's going to resume filming after Thanksgiving, and it's going to be the next Marvel spotlight, like Echo.
Okay. Is Wonder Man part of the Thunderbolts as well?
No.
Okay.
I'd say that was definitive. That was definitive.
But
sure.
I don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
But it could be like, I think it could be a launching point. I'm wondering if we have an idea we're going to get Vision Quest in the future, but I'm wondering if Vision could somehow be tied to this, and it could be a launching point for West Coast Avengers. What do you think, Sean?
Jean? Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do this, because he's a very he's just a very hard character I would never have thought to see on screen, because it's difficult with his backstory. So it's a really difficult backstory to sort of shoehorn and present as a narrative. So I'm really fingers crossed that they pull it off, because I like Yahya.
Yeah, I was just going to say they've got Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as cast as Wonder Man, and I'd watch him read a wet phone book, you know, in a dank, I don't know, just something ridiculous. I'd watch that guy do almost anything.
Yeah,
there you go. So
I'm excited
for it though. I'm still excited for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the first 2 episodes are going to be directed by the director of Shang-Chi, who was going to be the director of Kang Dynasty. So so Destin Daniel Cretton. So that now everyone's all abuzz about what's up with Kang Dynasty, because now the writer and the director have both been removed from the project.
Gone.
Yeah.
Right, not exited MCU, just exited that specific title, that particular movie.
Exactly. And
he's still directing stuff for
Well,
MCU.
now he's moved over to Wonder Man. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So.
But I still think, like, the same person who said that Kang Dynasty was probably canceled is also the same person who said Wonder Man was probably canceled. So let's just all take a breath and just wait and see what happens.
We'll wait and see. See. Okay, well, 50 some odd minutes into this podcast, we've not talked yet about the Marvels. We had things to say. Let's take a quick break. And when we get back, we will get into our spoiler-filled review. And we're back. All right, so let's start talking about the movie itself. Elysia, thank you as always for your excellent work on putting outlines together.
It's amazing.
Booyah, booyah.
We should start workshopping Alicia's superhero code name.
You want to know
Dynastic digits?
You want to know my Potawatomi name?
Yes.
Sure. What? Yeah.
It's Walks Tall Woman.
Really?
Walks Tall Woman, Kenosikwe.
Walks Tall Woman. There
Which,
you go.
by the way, I'm 5'2", 157 centimeters.
And it's still a very appropriate movie.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, there was the point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So I guess you have us starting off with doing a roundup on our team. Whoa, we're a team. Oh, I'm so excited.
Is that your Kamala Khan imitation, David?
That is. So
Hi.
let's besties, finger guns.
No, we're not a team.
When she was regretting doing the finger gun thing, that was
Right.
such a charming moment. That was so cute. I loved it. All right. So let's kick off with Carol Danvers, a.k.a. Captain Marvel.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, check out our preview app for the recaps of the character stories up to this movie. But we pick her up here leading a lonely life as the so-called annihilator with way too many powers.
Yeah.
What did you think
With her
of her in
cat.
this movie? And
She
with
was
her
like,
cat.
with her cat. Well,
her cat.
sorry, Flurkin.
With her
Not a cat.
Flurkin.
It's a
Yeah.
Flurkin.
Which
So
apparently
very much a person.
apparently Brie Larson is deathly allergic to cats. So anytime you
is
see
that
her
why
they
with a
CGI'd?
cat,
I did not know that.
That's
yeah.
funny.
What did you think of her, David, in this movie? How did you enjoy her in the mix?
By and large, I thought it was good. There were a couple of times when Brie felt like her acting was a little bit phoned in. It was a little bit sort of not there. But then there were other times where she really knocked me out, and there was some really great stuff. Was really glad to see the storyline come around in terms of what happened, why she was away. This idea that she really screwed something up badly, like badly, like this, you are the cause for all of these other things happening. There wasn't a lot of consequence, but I mean, in this movie, it's not Citizen Kane. So we're trying to, resolve some stuff. But I liked the fact that she was dealing with the fact that her superpowers, she thought she was doing something right, and it actually had a whole bunch of unattended consequences, which is what we had to get resolved and healed in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciated having Brie Larson stuck in there in that and having to grapple with that. So very cool to see her dealing with that. And then just the whole thing of her interactions with Kamala and with Rambeau and Fury. Yeah, it was fun. She was great. And the turning it around on her head with, well, I don't know if that's the right turn of phrase, but taking her from this very OP character and then making her a princess of this planet because of a marriage of convenience was a really fun way to sort of shake up the snow globe and twist our expectations around who she is and how she has to operate.
I'm bummed that they cut a whole musical number with the three women on that planet. Gutted.
That would
One
be
more
an
reason-
awesome YouTube release, right? Just
Yeah.
release
That
that song
There you
as
go.
a standalone thing. So
Or director's cut, as
Yeah.
Mhm.
Elysia keeps hoping for.
Yeah. And meanwhile, then we also had Monica Rambeau doing all the space investigations. She's no longer the little kid that Captain Marvel once knew. She's now working for SWORD, which stands for Sentient Weapon Observation and Response Division, because that happens to spell sword. And it seems like she's really developed her phasing powers since we last saw her in WandaVision. What did you think of her in this film, Sean?
Monica's great, man. She's one of the best characters that Marvel has, comic book wise for me. She's gone through a lot of iterations as I've, read her, throughout my years. But she's always been really super relatable and, also really, it's always been awesome to see a super powerful Black woman in the page and to see it come across on screen was really cool as well. And I think that I like that she didn't, at first, you could see that she had more control of her powers than when we last saw her, but also was kind of holding back, like throughout the movie. She was reluctant to do things, like when, at the point where she said she couldn't fly yet, right? So it was still like she was still learning about how to control her powers, and whether that was because she was afraid to, or whether she just genuinely did not know how to. I thought that was refreshing, because we don't get a lot of those sorts of scenes in some of the MCU movies. So it was really cool to watch her, work through those things, especially given how the movie ended, to see her come into her full being and really understand that, I can do great things and I can be super powerful. And it was really nice to see. I really enjoyed her character.
Black girl magic.
Yeah.
Black girl magic.
Definitely.
I kind of, okay, can I ask, did you guys cringe at that line, or was it just me?
No,
No?
I didn't cringe. I didn't cringe.
For me,
but
it was like the moment when they had all of the women gather together in Endgame.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, look, women, this one's for you. Like,
yeah, I think that one was a little more clunky, though.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I thought so. I didn't get that feeling that I got in that move in Endgame. So I didn't get that feeling.
Okay.
But maybe,
I mean, it was funny, but
well, it was kind of a Nick Fury toss-off.
Yeah. He's just like,
I think it
motivate.
was more about him.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things I really liked about Monica was contrasting her with Carol.
Yes.
And seeing, the sort of the next generation and how the whole questions of gender have shifted now. And so we have different kinds of questions in terms of how are you functioning? What is your role? How are you working with other people? And how are you fitting into your place in the whole scheme of things?
And it goes back to what you were talking about earlier when you had your friend who said, how can comparing Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, saying Captain Marvel is devoid of emotion, where you can see that Monica very clearly is not devoid of emotion, especially when it comes to, Captain Marvel herself. Like, their relationship is emotional. Their relationship is something that makes her question and makes her angry and makes her sad. And she did Tiona Patch did a great job portraying that on screen. Like, you saw it in her face, her body, the way she moved around Carol Danvers. It was really awesome. It was really awesome to see their interaction, because I was afraid that going into the film, I was afraid that they wouldn't have this sort of context to their relationship. And I'm very glad that they did show that context to their relationship, because at the end of the day, no matter the reason that Carol left, she still left.
Yeah. Right. And that line, you said you'd be back before I knew it.
Yeah. And that
was the little Lieutenant Trouble. Still there, still hurting. And yet Monica knows how to incorporate that into her daily life, how to live with that and so forth. And once she's confronted with Carol, then that has to come out, and somehow that has to be mended in some way.
And that had such a cutting meaning, because she was snapped, and she lost her mother in the snap.
Right.
And you weren't there for any of that.
Yeah.
But then it turns out
20 years ago, you told me that you would be back.
Right.
To be here to help me through these things.
Yeah.
And here I am, and you were not here for any of that. So it was really good stuff. It was really good stuff.
And it was a great foil then for Kamala.
Right.
To then just go, oh my God, bear hug.
Yes.
Right. And we learn something about Kamala, about who she is and the empathy that she carries, that it's just there. It's just such a vital part. And so it was a really great dynamic to explore that part of Kamala's relationship at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kamala gets to drop a bunch of Easter eggs in the whole codename game with.
So what's that about?
Well, so Monica Rambeau is gone by a number. Well,
Different
actually,
name.
her and her mother, and and also she, like, Carol Danvers was originally Ms. Marvel, and
Mhm.
it's a whole merry-go-round of names. And they even made toys with Monica Rambeau being Photon in this, and apparently they were going to end the movie with them saying, "Okay, your name is Photon," which was her mother's call sign when she was
Right. Right.
In the military.
So, but then they decided that, it just took away from the emotional final moment with her. So they decided to hold that back.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So that whole game that Kamala is playing is big winks to the comic book fandom.
Yes.
Yeah, they name dropped a few. I forget. There was a few. Yeah, it also not even just her own names, but just other, like, was it Professor Marvel? Yeah, anyway.
Right. Yes. Very cool.
Yeah. And how I think, the star most people are saying was Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. Do we all agree? She and her family stole the show again.
She was the standout. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Again, she was a linchpin that brought them all together.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
In many ways. And, they were trying to kind of hold her down for a while, and then so they thought, no, actually, we need some of this stuff, don't we?
And
particularly in terms of the emotional relationships. And she herself recognized when she'd gone too far and said,
yes,
I apologize to you, Carol, for coming on so strong. I mean, how's a person supposed to handle that kind of thing when you don't even know me?
Right.
So she's learning too. And I really liked that.
Yeah. She's,
the one thing
she's a teenager. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just saying she's a teenager. She's, she's maturing, but still is in many ways the most emotionally mature. And that comes down to her family.
Exactly.
Yes.
And her generation.
So happy to see her family on the large screen.
Absolutely.
Portrayed in the way that they're portrayed, because so often in superhero and fantasy, we don't get this portrayal of a loving, inclusive family life for the hero.
Right.
There's always this loss, which is a big conversation that we had around Spider-Verse, about having to lose something in order to become who you are meant to be, the best version of yourself. And the cons are totally the opposite of that. Her family is her rock, and they love her unconditionally. She loves them unconditionally, and it shows. And her mother and her father and her brother are there with her every step of the way. And you could just feel like it just felt right to see that portrayed on screen. And I'm so happy that they did that, where we don't have this, she lost her mother, or she lost her father, or her brother was killed, or some tragedy that happened.
Peter Parker event, yeah.
Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be the canon event where you lose something so grave, so important in your life that it propels you forward to become the great person that you were destined to be.
Right, a pain, a trauma, taking a trauma.
John, you're ringing so many bells for me, because this is the classic trope of the Bildungsroman, the youth growing up, or the Harry Potter story, where, yes, you have to eliminate the parents so that the kid can be the focus of attention and learn all these lessons. In Tahanu, we see something quite different. It's not sacrifice to grow and to gain. That is frowned upon. So, I mean, you're giving me chills when I'm thinking about all these stories, all the different ways they handle this question. And you're absolutely right. It never occurred to me before, but this is the complete opposite, isn't it?
My grandmother sent it to me in the mail.
Right. Right.
Hello? What? Excuse me? You didn't have to, go on a trek and lose half the team and to find the bangle?
And it's, really clear that this is, for me being, Haitian American, born in the States, grew up with, Creole, English, French, and all sorts of patois going on in my life as a child, right? This idea that you have to, lose a part of yourself, your family life, is foreign for me. It's not. It doesn't hold weight for me. That is a very Western Protestant type of attitude of looking at family. Like, you grow up.
I don't know. I think it's just like it comes from the northern, especially places where, you know, it was just a hard fact of life.
Yeah.
People would starve and die.
It's very Puritan.
Yeah. Well,
very Puritan
even pre-Puritan. Even pre-Puritan. Look at the Norse sagas.
Yeah.
Right.
But from a psychological standpoint, the healthiest people are the people who come from well-supported environments, and we should be celebrating this more on screen and encouraging this. These are the people we want to be our leaders.
Yeah,
so it's possible to have drama in other ways.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
And
it's possible to be tested in other ways.
Bring this around, then too. Here's Brie Larson. Here's Captain Marvel, who did suffer a trauma to gain power. Mm-hmm. She's living this lonely existence out in space.
Yes,
with her Flurkin in her. It's a cool pad, right? She's got it all dialed in. It looks like a very comfortable place. Totally want to hang out there. But then along comes Kamala, who's from a big family with that's vibrant and alive and loving and expression. Kisses. And what does she do? She's like, not at first she fangirls, but then she deals with that. But then, she's empathy, she's love. And it's just like, I'm not going to stuff my feelings in my, a way to hide them. I'm going to be out here with you, connected to you, and shower you with this attention.
Yeah.
And that's what Captain Marvel needed to be brought back in.
And not only for that,
everywhere. Yeah.
Not only to be brought back in, I think Brie Larson needed this to get back to that place and that event for which she was named the Annihilator.
Right. Yeah.
And deal with the deep emotional layer of that, which I plan on talking about later. I can talk about it now.
Well, and then what does she do? The heart is, the sun is dead and cold or dying, and she reignites it.
She reignites the heart.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a great film, man. It was really good stuff. It's really good stuff. I'm just saying, there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's a lot of good stuff in here.
So I thought it was a lot of fun. They had this whole, just don't think too hard about the whole cosmic quantum entanglement. We've been talking a lot about quantum entanglement. This is, we've got Kamala, has her hard light powers, and we have, I'm going to call her Photon with her, phasing powers, and they all have sort of these energy light based powers, and they just have, so anytime they're using them at the same time, they swap places. And that was just everything around that. Like, the whole montage was just so much fun, where with Kamala's family's getting involved in their living room, Goose is getting carried around with them, and he's just swallowing these Kree soldiers one place, spitting them up another place, and Nick Fury's just there in a chair the whole time, what the fuck's going on?
From a storytelling mechanic standpoint, the movie did a really good job of introducing us to the big bad, setting up some personal stakes for our primary characters, and then boom, getting us right into the action, setting up the complexity of the entanglement, and then delivering on that, and training us so that when we do later, when they have to figure it out and figure out how we're going to work together, we as an audience already fully understand the mechanics of what's involved. Who cares about the photon wave with the inverse coupling of the photonic, whatever. We just know that if they use their powers, this thing happens. And
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Elysia pointed this out. It's very important to catch that little line as long as we're using them at the same time.
Right. At the same time. Yeah.
Right. Because people were complaining it was inconsistent. No, it's because they weren't. It has to be at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So really good job on Nia DaCosta's storytelling standpoint and who's the script writer who wrote this one? Elysia, do we have that?
It was there's like 4. So we talked.
Okay.
We went. They'll bring something different to the table.
Anyway,
We talked about that in the preview episode. Yeah.
Yeah, and so bringing that together, and then the way that plus then their editing, right? Because we know that they did a lot of chop and change on this. So the way that they brought that around, and that gave us that sense of entertainment. Hey, this is going to be a good time, and this is really funny. When they're in the space elevator going around in circle, and then in the Khan family living room. It was a really great slapstick. It was a slapstick, a traditional slapstick style sort of thing. And I think that's what gave me a lot of the energy of, oh, this is going to be a fun romp, because they didn't waste time setting that up and then getting it. They went straight into it as fast as they could.
I liked this approach to this kind of swappingness better than how they handled it in Loki.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I found that Loki was much more opaque. And it really took me a while to figure out what the heck is going on, which, on the one hand, that's fine. A lot of people like that. But here it was quick. It was upfront. You knew right away what was going on. And it was amusing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, the visuals, Loki, time slipping. I mean, that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
That particular device. But I just found it easier to follow this throughout. Than I did some of the Loki stuff.
So, and that's interesting too, because they had this movie times out at 105 minutes, where we had 6 episodes of Loki, which were pushing 40 to 50-minute episodes. So, what you can do, a good tight movie can deliver so much on plot and character, and motivation, all of those kinds of things when it really knows what it wants to say.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I really liked how they also tangled their memories using that device, that Kree device. And, Carol just can't help but think about these things. And that's how Monica finds out that she did go back to see Maria before she died.
Right.
And this is how they end up being forced to talk about things that it wouldn't feel natural for, especially Captain Marvel as a character, to just say. She's not that type.
Right.
And now she's forced to confront it. Yeah. So I thought that was some good writing.
Very good. All right. Well, let's talk about Dar-Ben.
So, Jean, this is we talked about this before, and you said you didn't even want to read about it because this is someone who's only been in 2 issues of the comics.
And not a very important character, I don't think.
No.
But she was great.
Yeah. I think
she was a great villain. She was a great villain.
I could also just stare at her face all day. So that's one thing. But also I think she just has a really captivating face. But I also found, her motivations. They didn't have to give me her whole childhood story or something, but her motivations resonated with me.
Exactly. She was a great villain. She had a purpose. She had a plan. She had a reason. And I was totally on board with it. I thought she did a great job of being serious and being no nonsense and really, wanting to get her objective done, no matter the cost, no matter who had to pay, and wanting some measure of revenge. And that was really cool to see. It wasn't like this universe shattering drama, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to take over the world. I don't want to take over my galaxy, the universe. I don't want to end everything. I just want to fix some things for my people, and I'm going to do it, no matter who gets hurt in the process.
Yeah, so the story of her is completely different in those 2 comic issues, but there's still, it was a male Dar-Ben and they co-ruled with someone, but it was the idea was I'm going to take back justice for my people and then get killed 2 issues later. But
so I was totally on board with her. Her portrayal was Ashton's portrayal was really great. She was really awesome. I thought her holding the universal weapon and just, wielding it in the way that she did just showed how powerful she could be. She was and she is. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching her on screen.
Yeah,
every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, Marilyn, it feeds into what you were saying earlier about Captain Marvel.
Yeah, every time I looked at her face, I thought, oh, I don't ever want to meet her face to face.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
She
Yeah.
didn't have to say anything. She
Yeah.
didn't have to gesture. I mean, it was all in her eyes.
Just the look. Just
And
the look.
and you put in our notes here, Elysia, that there were complaints that she was too flat.
Yeah, exactly. That's
And I
what I
thought,
was
what
thinking.
movie
Yeah.
were you watching? What, what, again, this gender expectation of displaying emotion or not displaying emotion. Darned if you do, darned if you don't kind of thing. It just, I'm astounded at that because, she gave me the
My
shivers.
only complaint would have been that she didn't have enough
Enough to do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
She was very singular dimension, and she played it well. But boy, I would have loved to have spent some more time. I love the timbre of her voice. I love Zawe Ashton's just like you were saying, her look and her presence on stage. The fact that she's I love it when stage actors come on screen,
right?
Because the way they comport themselves, the way that they hold their physical body in some ways, and the way that they speak, you can really think, wow, this person on stage would be a powerhouse. I would love to see her in some live performances. I just couldn't get enough of her.
Yeah. And again, her backstory, PTSD, deep grief.
Yes.
And this deranged, utter conviction of the rightness of her course of action.
Yes.
Which ironically was exactly the sorts of things that Carol was displaying when she went and did what she did.
Good point.
They're like mirrors of each
twinning.
other.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Totally.
And in the opposite,
and the very fundamental, violence begets violence.
Yeah.
Right? And actions have consequences, even if you're a superhero on the quote unquote good side.
Yeah. And where the tables turned, they might have found themselves in the same opposite positions.
Right.
I would think so.
Yeah.
When we have the flashback scene of the Annihilator annihilating, and we see Captain Marvel there with the glowing eyes and the sort of on fire persona, you really got the sense of like, oh yeah, right. This is we got we got her story on the other side. Well, yeah,
right.
It was really a great way to.
Yeah, her killing the universal intelligence or the supreme intelligence is like, it's like Sylvie and Loki killing the time Lord.
Yes.
Like she's doing it. She's like, I want to set everyone free without fully thinking through all of the consequences, because you don't know what the consequences are really. There's always going to be massive consequences.
So a little more than a touch of revenge there for Carol.
Yeah.
And understandably so. She was kidnapped. She lost 6 years of her life. She didn't know who she was. They used her. And that incredible line from the movie, which made me stand up and cheer in the theater. I've been fighting my whole life with one hand tied behind my back. What happens when I'm finally free? That's the women's movement in a nutshell, right there.
Right.
Period, paragraph, end of story. It was brilliant. And the flip side of that is your actions still have consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I do have to say one thing that I hoped was in the movie and wasn't was any reference to the 10 rings. So we have the universal weapon / it's been previously called the Cosmorod, and so that was the same staff that was carried by Ronan the Accuser. And
I refuse to call it the
recognized it. I recognized it. I was so proud of myself.
What were you saying, Jean?
I refuse to call it the Cosmic Rod because it's not.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to go there.
No. Your exuberance is warranted. It's okay. That's needed, but it is the universal weapon.
Rods, please.
It is the universal weapon.
Previously wielded
by Ronan the Accuser.
By Ronan,
who is played by our favorite Lee Pace from
Lee Pace. Oh, right. Good point.
It was kind of a breakout role for Lee Pace, I believe.
I think so.
I think so. And then Thranduil came along after that.
Yeah. And it was infused, it's purple energy because it was infused with energy from the Power Stone. So it also has that purple cosmic energy like the bangles. So
bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, we saw the first bangle in the Ms. Marvel, and now we have found the second one. So Jean, I don't know if you want to Comics Corner this a little bit or...
I don't, because they're not the quantum bands. They're not the nega bands.
They are calling them the quantum bands.
I know they are, but I'm just like
your tone of voice, John.
Just like I'm not calling it the cosmic rod. I am not doing it. I'm not doing it until I get real firm confirmations that they are quantum bands. But because they
did change it to universal weapon, yeah.
You're right. So exactly. But because quantum bands to me is a whole other hero, it's a whole other mythology,
right.
It's a whole other backstory. So they could presumably, recount some things, but up to this point they haven't. So I'm hesitant to call it that yet.
What about the nega bands? Can they be in the nega bands? Because Captain Marvel wielded those.
Right, the original
and they were
Captain
based
Marvel.
on the quantum bands. So
the original Captain,
so the quantum bands were made for Quasar, so that's another character, and it was made by Eon, which is one of the statues we saw in Thor 4, and the property is Hardlight. So, and then the nega bands were later based on the quantum bands, and these cause entanglement, which is what we see happening in this movie. So I feel like these two types of bands have emerged. And it also makes someone get trapped in the negative zone, but we have not seen the negative zone, although maybe it's a Nor dimension, which they didn't bring that up either.
Right, they didn't bring it up.
In Ms. Marvel, there's a whole other dimension that they introduce, and they didn't bring it back.
Where the bands are supposedly from, the people who wield them, the beings who wield them are from this other dimension, and we commonly know them on Earth as Jinn. So,
or the clandestines,
or the clandestines in Ms. Marvel. That's what they called themselves. But again, the nega bands were Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers had Captain Marvel powers, who was also a Kree warrior. Okay. If he was one of the OP characters in Marvel in the 70s and 80s who died of cancer. Cancer took him out. But his power set was almost not exactly like Carol Danvers, but a lot of it is the flight, the superhuman strength, the endurance, the being able to survive in outer space. And he was also a Kree, right? So a lot of her background story tangles with this Captain Marvel from the comic books, who we haven't seen or hasn't been mentioned in the MCU at all.
Right. And that's what so we didn't tell the people that in my math rant, there was also a picture of a guy wearing a Make Marvel mail again.
Yes.
That's his complaint is it's exactly that we haven't seen that version of Captain Marvel.
Right. And it's not necessary to see in order to have Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. That's their entire point. You don't have to go, scene panel for panel, comic book for comic book, story arc for story arc in order to tell the stories that we're getting on screen. So I'm hesitant to link these things together at this moment. Not saying that they won't be, because now we've opened up the multiverse. We have different timelines. We have different universes that are going to be explored in coming films and most likely TV shows. So maybe we will get some of that entanglement. If I could use that word, borrow that word.
That's the theme.
You took it right out of the mouth, Sean, because I was going to ask if instead of cosmic entanglement, we've got comic entanglement.
Yeah. There we go. Yes. So we'll see.
So go ahead, Elysia. I was just going to add a question about Kamala.
Oh, yeah. Well, I noticed that when she's not wearing the bangles, she's now still using her hard light. So does that mean it just unlocked her power, her mutant power, and now she can just do it? And I guess it enhances it?
That's how I took it. I took it.
So that was really subtle. That was a really subtle thing that they did in there. So if you're paying attention, but if you're not paying attention, then it wouldn't matter.
You miss it.
Right.
So you think they're really paving ground for mutants?
Well, they already named her a mutant.
Okay.
In the TV show.
In Ms. Marvel. Yeah.
Oh, right.
In her TV show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
Very,
now
very end.
to I think a good outcome of seeing this movie is that my spouse and I are going to watch that show.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
It's delightful. You'll love it.
That's great. Yeah.
Bob and I adored it.
Friday night shows and the things that we watch, and we're kind of like in a little bit. We started to watch Hijack the other night, but it's a little bit too much anxiety inducing, and so I think this will be a perfect thing to switch to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
And I
was
think that's
beautifully done.
And that's also one of the great things about this interconnected MCU, this universe that they've created is that you can watch things out of order and then say,
Right.
well, now I'm curious about that character and I want to go learn more.
Yep. Yeah, and as long as they don't make them in a dependency way in terms of its sequencing and rollout, then you can roll back. Then I think that works well. So
yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Hala and the Annihilator and the Supreme Intelligence. I know that's a painful part of this movie, right? That's the trauma.
Right. But it's so realistic. It just reminds me of so many things from history when someone comes in and means well or just is like clumsy and does by accident. Like I think about Easter Island when a Dutch explorer, Jacob Roggeveen, he came in the 18th century and found this island. And, there were people there who had been isolated for a long time and had built this culture and had these statues, the famous statues that were protecting them. And then this European came on and used a gun and killed people dead. And then not only that, left behind disease that they hadn't been exposed to before. And then suddenly there's civil war and they've overturned their religion and they've cut down all of their greenery, and it just you just don't realize when you think you're doing something simple, or when in Afghanistan during the Cold War, you think, okay, we're going to block Russia, we're going to help this other group rise, and you don't realize that other group's the Taliban, and just how well you can think I'm intervening in a useful way and make things worse.
My first question is always, did they ask you?
Yeah, well.
But of course, that's not considered in these kinds of situations of culture clash and power imbalances.
No, I think both. Did they ask you, and what are the unintended consequences are valid. I also think that Carol's reason was just as valid, right?
Well,
I have to say the Kree, as we've seen them on screen, are not blameless. They are a spacefaring, warmongering culture.
Oh, yeah.
The Supreme Intelligence.
They're not hobbits, Yeah.
They're not. The Supreme Intelligence is about conquering as much space for the Kree civilization as possible. They are very much, I don't want to say a negative, but they are very much, they're not
the good guys.
They're
they
not.
never play the good guys in the comics hardly.
They're not. They're not the good guys. There are some Kree who are good, of course. There are the people who, live on these worlds who have, they just live on these worlds. They go about their lives. They do what they're going to do. And that's always a greater question of, what do the people who just live, what role do they have in what their government or their military or whatever you want to call it, what role do they have in that, right? Because people who suffer are oftentimes not the people who are making the decisions.
Exactly, Jean. I mean, if you have supreme power and you're going to exercise it, you have to think about the consequences of so-called tidying up loose ends, which is
right.
kind of what it was from the end of the Captain Marvel movie to this point. You think again, she made a statement, tell them I'm coming to finish it. That statement she followed through on.
Yeah.
But she had very personal motivations for doing so.
Right.
And she just didn't think about next steps.
Right. She didn't think what would happen to Kree civilization without the Supreme Intelligence, who's been ruling them for for thousands of years.
And all they know is warfare. All they know is, at least that's how they're presented to us. Obviously, there are families there. There are other forms of civilization. They do a neat line in weapons. I expect they probably have some good metalworking going on or something like that, right? I mean, there is, this is an obvious statement, isn't it? There's no such thing as purely good or purely evil. And if you're holding yourself, I mean, that's kind of what Loki figured out in the end, I think. So you have, it's not that Carol had quote unquote bad intentions, but it was kind of I hate the word purity, but she had a very, let's call it a mono outlook. A very simplistic view.
Agreed.
Of this planet and this culture and all the rest of it. And she had seen the Skrulls, and it was guilt. I mean, it was just guilt that she had contributed to the suffering of the Skrulls for so long.
Yes.
And now she realizes, oh my gosh, I'm visiting exactly the same thing upon these people that I was punishing for visiting on another group of people. So, yeah.
And that's, I think it's an important point on guilt when you act out of guilt, as opposed to using your feeling of guilt to say, I've got some work to do here. I've got some repair work to do here. Let me stop. Let me acknowledge. Let me ask. How can these are the things I would like to do to make it right or whatever. But when you blindly react emotionally from that guilty place, usually doesn't end very well. That's, what we see here.
I think she's being fueled by her guilt about how she had been complicit for 6 years in the destruction of a people or the attempted destruction of a people.
Right. And
that just flipped and led her
down
to do exactly the same
more bad decisions.
thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And I think also, her decision to destroy the Supreme Intelligence was to placate her own feeling. It wasn't about what was right for the Skrulls. Right. It wasn't about, let's stop the massacre of Skrull.
Right.
Populace. No. Right. It was, you did this to me and now you're going to pay for it. Right. And that was the motivation behind what she did. What she failed to do was to actually help the Skrulls.
Find a new world, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what she failed to do.
But okay, so we got the one reference to Secret Invasion in the entire movie.
Yes. I was thinking about you guys when they were on the planet there.
Yeah.
So we finally see they talked about graphics referred to Emperor Droge, and they made it sound like it was a terrible place to be in that colony. But that colony
was really nice.
Why isn't everyone there?
Yeah,
like what's on the rest of the planet?
What's wrong with this planet?
I understand there's a problem now with no air, but
I mean, now it has no air.
That's a little problematic.
But it had air when we first got there.
Yeah, exactly.
Darth Ben took the air away.
I didn't see any Dermot Mulrooney's trying to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Unless it was just that one little tiny section that was inhabitable, and all the rest.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, okay, all right, okay. That could be.
I can make up stories.
That could be it. But it looked nice.
Yeah, I did genuinely pull at my heartstrings and had me holding my breath and feeling tension and feeling really wanting to scream at them when, all the air was being sucked away and they had to leave without everybody. That was a really emotional sequence.
And that was emotional for, Kamala, you know what I mean? It was emotional for her to witness, her hero turn her back on saving people.
Well,
saving lives.
Well, it was something of a military decision.
Of course, yes.
You can't save
everybody.
So save who you can, but you leave when you have to.
But as a hero,
something like that.
As a hero, you try to save every single life, and that's what she was looking at. She was looking at this like totally the opposite. This is not a military.
And maybe with her bangle, she could have. That's what I was wanting to scream at. Like, use the bangle.
Interesting.
And that goes back to conversations that, with Captain America and Tony Stark about making the hard call.
Yeah.
And, back to Spider-Man and responsibility and, with Loki, with Gloria's Purpose, all of these things where when you're faced with this stuff, and I think it was a real growth moment for Kamala to see. I mean, they left a lot of people when the ship takes off from the camera and the animation back.
A lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people down there. And,
a lot.
When you talk about, growing up in America and Jersey City and a Pakistani family and the trauma that, that those people are carrying, that it rings, right? It really rings. And it rung for me, for her, in that sense of like, oh, damn, this isn't all just fun and games. This is real.
Right. This is her family story.
Yeah.
As you'll see when you watch, Marvel.
Yes.
This is very much a story that hits home to her, like having to leave people behind.
Right.
This is something that is very real to her being, because that's part of her family history.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's it was really good stuff. It was really good stuff.
And that was the only secret invasion. I know David and Jean, you guys especially were really hoping that we would really just delve into that plot some more.
Elysia. Elysia, I'll tell you something.
I think they just put the blinders on and then they just paid no attention to it and moving forward.
But is it going to have consequences in the future? Because, so we got that Valkyrie cameo, which we have to talk about, but then she ends up, she's taking this group of Skrull refugees to New Asgard, I guess. But I guess New Asgard is also in trouble because President Ritson said he's going after everyone born off planet.
Right.
So
in the show. Sorry, Marilyn?
Unless you look like Asgardians, and then maybe you get a pass.
Right.
There's a lot of
because they can
very
pass.
fertile potential there.
Yes.
No, true, because they look godly. Yeah, because
if they decide to go there, it'll be interesting.
Okay, so Valkyrie's cameo, which was great. I mean, it was great to see Tessa Thompson. She looked good. She was smart. Oh,
baby.
But it was the biggest WTF moment for me. I was thinking, I knew I could headcanon it together, but then I was just thinking about my spouse sitting next to me going, do I explain anything about this? Because it was just, what the hell? Was that the Bifrost?
Yeah, it was a Bifrost. I mean, but that's okay. So it makes sense that she would travel there by Bifrost. But then, I can see if you're like, who is that? Did it bother your wife that she didn't know?
No, she was like, whatever. She was like,
I don't need to.
She called a friend.
The person taking them to,
she called a friend.
Whatever.
Yeah, she called somebody that she knew to help out.
So Carol knew Valkyrie.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, but we don't. That hasn't been like.
Do we know how and why?
I mean, they met, I guess, in Endgame, but
fair point. Okay,
but there has been, I have to say,
part of the women's brigade.
There's been some fan shipping about wanting them to be a couple.
Okay,
and it feels like they did give a little nod to that with like
wink.
that cheek kiss, But then. They finally started to get China to show Marvel movies again. So you see them every time there's going to be, LGBT representation on screen. They pull back, they're just like,
okay,
you can have a kiss on the head or a kiss on the cheek.
Right.
So we'll see.
Pointless.
So pointless. Although, when I was looking at the box office numbers, China accounts for a lot of it.
Yeah, right. It really
Which
does.
is why... Forget that, because the Chinese people who want to see it will just pirate it anyway.
Right,
absolutely,
and get that money from women.
Right, there you go.
Right,
there you go.
There you go.
Even gay women. Oh,
yeah, exactly. I know. Did you know that that's a whole demographic?
I am shocked. It's a good thing I'm sitting down.
Yeah. So I don't know. So
All
I'm
right.
curious to see if that goes anywhere, if Gaia pops up again and, all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's got to be some
Yeah, man.
fallout.
Well,
It's
I
good.
loved your pointing out. I loved your pointing out that Guy and Monica played together as kids.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a very good
Yeah.
catch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People should
Right.
remember that. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll hope
Hopefully.
they have the
Hopefully
wisdom to
that comes
follow up
back.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, should we sing about Aladna for a little bit?
This was one of my
I
favorite
thought it
parts
was
of the movie.
What was it, Bollywood Aladdin?
Yes.
It's
It was
okay.
Very, very. So my spouse, she was like, "Oh, Bollywood, this is cool," and she dug it. You know.
Yeah.
So
Well, it comes
But
right
it
from
was
the
kind
comic.
of a mashup, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Bollywood and
yeah.
2001 Nights.
Exactly. In the comics,
It's called
there's-
Aladna.
Right,
exactly. Yeah. They're not subtle.
good point.
But in the comics, it's a rhyming planet. Everyone speaks in rhyme.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I'm happy they chose singing because
Right.
Enough reverse.
they would start rapping. I'd have been like, I don't think you guys should be doing this one here. You know?
I mean, I don't even think Monica should be rapping. No.
Exactly. I'm everybody in the
Seriously.
whole movie. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad they chose singing. It was a cool piece. I thought it was really fun. You know what? I will be honest. I heard about it. I did not think I would enjoy it,
Mhm.
and I watched it. It made sense, and I was totally enthralled by it.
They did
That
a good
piece.
job at folding and bringing these pieces together. So, because we
Yeah.
don't know what they shot, and we know part of the MCU process is to reassemble the Lego pieces in post. And I think, maybe we're missing some stuff from here, but
Yeah.
at the same time,
Yeah, we know
however
there
they
was
can-
backlash against this part. Yeah.
right.
cut
But
it.
even regardless of how they managed for that, it did, like you say, Jean, I think it felt whole and seamless. I didn't feel jarred out of the storyline.
Not at all. And I thought it was cool. I thought the piece when Carol says he's bilingual was
Yeah,
That was so funny.
That got-
was
so
hilarious.
That got such a big
Yeah.
laugh in my theater.
That was just
There was also an audible gasp from the women behind me when Prince Sion walked out.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this guy strutting his stuff here with his
Yeah.
little wing thing here? I was like,
Yeah.
oh, all right.
and I'll be interested to see if we go back,
Uh-huh.
if they play, if they follow anything about the comic in the representation of their civilization, which would be really cool. Which would be
Yeah,
really
well, this felt like it would, because that, if anyone wants to know how Carol became married to him, that's just like straight up a story from the comics. You can just read it.
Yeah.
And in this, it just follows right up on that. But one of my only complaints about the movie is the fact that we don't find out what happened to them. I'm like, is the planet okay? How much water
Yeah.
did they
Right.
lose?
Yeah,
Is Prince Jan
I'm saying.
okay? Like, I need to know.
Exactly.
They-
I hope we go
I was
back.
expecting a splashdown and a huge
Right.
tsunami.
Right.
And, all kinds of.
Like I really
Yeah.
want them to go
Chaos.
back. I want them to go back to see,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
explore a bit of this civilization a little bit more, because I think people will really dig it to see it on screen,
Yeah.
especially if they stay somewhat truish to the comic. I think it would be really
Mhm.
cool to watch how that interplays
say-
with the characters that we have.
I was a little weirded out at first, but I just said, all right, I'll go with it.
Go with it. Yeah. Yeah.
It was fun. It was colorful.
Yeah.
I'm a musician.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, just go with it.
but it did bring up a question for me. I had a vague notion that Kamala's scarf was something that appeared in the first graphic novel. Is that right?
Yes.
Does anybody? Okay. Oh,
Marilyn.
internet points here. Because we're talking a long time ago. folks.
Well done.
We're talking 8 years ago.
It's part of her
Um,
costume. Yes.
It's part of her costume, but she didn't seem to recognize that it was a weapon until Jan says, use the
Yeah.
scarf.
Right. This.
And suddenly it's something like clicking. And oh, right, scarf. There was something. So, okay, good.
They also
I'm
had
I'm
called
really chuffed.
They had a callback to Monica's first Captain Marvel costume where she had like that white floofy wing thing. And as they're walking out, she's like, this is too much, right? And just throws it away.
That was totally cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Speaking of cute.
Meow.
Yeah. Okay. So like Aladna, I guess, is my second favorite sequence. And yeah, the Flurkin nest. We had first, they kept talking about how, I was like, why is everyone fat shaming Goose?
Goose is pregnant.
Yeah. And then we got those squishy eggs of cuddly cuteness. Yeah.
But they were coming from outer space.
Yeah.
Well, don't try to explicate the mystery of Flurkins, right? I mean,
right? Yeah,
what they are. But it seems now that it's been confirmed that Flurkins are parthenogenic as well as containing undetectable extension charms inside them. Right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just wanted to clear that up.
They're mini fuzzy TARDISes. They're bigger.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah, there you go.
Interdimensional beings of some kind or something.
True. This is sci-fi, not fantasy.
They're the what is that in Foundation?
The
vault.
The vault, yeah, there you go. Yeah, the vault.
They're furry vaults.
Yeah. I'll go with TARDIS.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sequence was a gift that kept on giving. Like every time we heard, please stop running and let the Flurkin eat you, the entire theater just like doubled over laughing harder. Like,
and again, in this, we have a singing planet. We have Flurkins consuming people. And this sort of ridiculous ploy to save the remaining people because of the pods. We don't have enough pods. All of that could have been terribly stupid and could have tanked the movie. But however they did it, it inverted it. And the theater I was in, which, granted had a dozen people, everybody was laughing. Everybody was having a good time with it. And it was really... how they pulled all of this off with the shifting places, with the Khan family, the singing planet, Flurkins, and still having a Marvel style, beat the bad guy story. It's still they made it work, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we have to not only shout out the cast but also Nia DaCosta. Especially on the heels
and the editors. I don't know.
Yeah, the
editors worked well together.
The writers, and that's
takes a village.
That's something that we have to recognize, especially given the vitriol that she's gotten as a director. Surrounding this movie. Just really, really great stuff. Really good stuff. Not everybody can pull that off, and they did it.
They cannot.
They did it.
So they really did some work to set up this incursion stuff, right, Elysia? Mm-hmm. We got some secret war thing. Right.
So we've been seeing more and more of these incursions in the last Doctor Strange movie and the last Spider-Man movie. So this is where the two different realities touch each other, and we've been warned that it can lead to total collapse. And so we know that the big Avengers movie to end this phase is going to be Secret Wars, which is, not to get too spoilery, but it's just basically when all of the worlds just start massively colliding and all chaos breaks loose.
And why are the wars secret?
Sounds like a pretty big reveal to me.
Maybe it's too much of a spoiler.
Well,
we've already had a secret invasion.
Yes, exactly.
Like that very much. Maybe we should consider changing the title.
So the original Secret Wars was a being called the Beyonder who took different heroes and villains and set them up on a world where he could watch them do battle with each other for the fate of the universe. The incursion storyline, which is, universes coming together and totally being obliterated, like the entirety of existence. And there are extra dimensional beings, the Beyonders, who are behind this spectacle. And the Secret Wars was an outshoot of what was going on. Once those entire universes were destroyed, there were several pockets. Like one major region was being kept for the entirety of everything that Marvel comics had. It was like one world, just one that was saved from being wiped out, and that's where we get all this other stuff from.
Just like Ask and Embla being tucked away in Yggdrasil.
Yeah.
Throughout Ragnarok, so that when all the dust had settled, you could start all over.
Yeah.
Well, we have to wonder Loki's Yggdrasil, how that's going to play into this.
Yeah. So
definitely,
they've done a lot of the work.
What if the Watcher? Yeah.
They've done a lot of the work that, we've been asking. Everybody's been saying, "Oh, tell us what's coming. We want to, that's what Marvel used to do. They used to give us, hints and they used to tell us, we should see things." Well, they're telling you pretty clearly what's happening,
right.
So
about.
We have a clarification question. We have timelines and dimensions, and those are, you could have multiple timelines in a dimension.
Yes.
Well, it's like the branching timelines are basically those are the different multiverse options, so some of them are very near, very like close to and look almost the same. Like, for instance, the Netflix Daredevil universe and the MCU Daredevil universe are very, very close to each other.
Right.
And then other ones are just completely different, like, we're going to talk in a minute about the credit scene, but where obviously the X-Men have some sway.
Okay.
And I think probably it looks like in a bunch of other universes, Maria Rambeau became Captain Marvel or, some other version of that rather than Carol Danvers, because that event just happened differently. So it's a branch timeline.
It's a different universe. There's
right. But a branch timeline is also a different universe.
Right. So they're going to have to explain these sorts of things because they haven't done that yet. Because
they have to line up the language.
Right. Because the timelines, I can say it's a different timeline from this universe, right? From the main universe that I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But it's a different universe if it's a different timeline. In the MCU.
Elysia, we're about to nerd off. We're going to nerd off over here.
I know.
I'm telling you right now.
On the same topic.
I'm telling you right now, we're going to nerd off over here. I'm just giving you a warning.
The way they handled it in Loki was all the different branching timelines were not just in the same universe; they were in the same world.
Right.
What do you mean the same world?
Confusion.
Oh, I mean, they were. Yeah, they all took place like on Earth, on Midgard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's where some of the confusion lies.
So we'll have to clean that stuff up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess they need to make this clearer also and show, because I think that Loki and the Watcher are now in very similar positions.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I don't know who the Watcher is.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's a being, just like the name says, really quickly, just like the name says, he watching.
Well, I get it.
That's all.
Yeah, he's watching everything.
He's watching.
That's all
everywhere.
But he's not keeping it all together, though.
Just
Loki's keeping it all together.
Right. That's different. Yeah.
Right, let's wrap up the
keeping
finale.
it all together. Keeping it all together is Monica, who for some reason has to be on the other side of the rift to close it. And it was a genuinely, bittersweet ending to the movie. Even though we know she's still alive, we got to see so much development with Carol and Monica's relationship in that short time.
Yeah.
And we do have a loss here now, though, too. You're talking about, gaining power and strength through not trauma, but we do end up with a trauma here. So,
yeah. But then they gain a new house. Wait, the Khans are no longer in Jersey City? This is sacrilege?
See, I didn't pick that up at all.
I thought the brother. I thought the mom was getting the brother to.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't think the Khan. I don't think the Khan, except for Amir. I think Amir.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
so he and Carol are going to share a house?
I don't know. No.
Because I thought that Carol was taking care of the house until
Right.
either Monica or Maria come back.
But they
Right.
needed a new house, the Khans, because their house got destroyed in the
Right.
fight.
It did.
Well, there is that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, he doesn't need a house until he gets a wife.
Well,
he has a wife.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
but we don't know that. I mean,
She hasn't been
Called
seen.
her.
he could have been calling a boyfriend.
Yeah, she hasn't been seen. She hasn't been seen. Yeah.
The one thing I'll say about this final scene, though, too, that final scene was, I'm sure glad they didn't try to fly that plane because the thing's been sitting for so
You're right.
long.
Seriously.
No
Right,
safety
right.
checks, the fuel, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Get rid of the squirrel's
Right,
nest that was swarmed
exactly.
in
Do
there.
not go about
Right.
air in that thing.
No.
When it's also interesting that they're in Louisiana, which is where the new Captain Marvel is. I mean, sorry, America is. Yeah. So you
That's
have to
right.
wonder if they're lining that up
Mackie.
for some reason.
Mackie's
Yeah,
on. He's
I
coming.
know.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about it. I mean, that's
Sure enough, he'll be here. It's like
okay. Credit scene. Now, was there two?
No,
credit
well,
scenes?
one is there was going to be two credit scenes, but they just made one like the final scene of the movie. But it
Okay,
kind of
right,
served
with the
as
Young
a
Avenger
credit.
thing, which is right. I'm
Mhm.
glad they didn't have to sit through the entire thing. So
Right. There was
Right,
just a
so Young
flirting sound at the
Avengers.
end for anyone
Yeah.
who sat through the whole thing.
right,
But yeah,
because it did
yes.
feel the Young Avenger thing did feel very like it should have been a post-credit stinger thing, right?
Right,
it
exactly.
felt that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they put it there. Okay, so
Yeah, and so Kamala, she was basically doing exactly what Nick Fury did in like the very first post-credit scene or mid-credit scene. I thought that scene was hilarious. I found this under my couch.
And it was a great callback because at the beginning she was like, "Oh, is that the?" Yeah, she was marveling at it, right? So it was
Yeah,
perfect.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
to speak.
Yes,
Marveling
yeah,
at it.
I know.
You're right.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I heard what you did there.
Yes, thank you.
So this is based on some comics since 2005. Yeah, who do you think? Obviously, the team's going to be a bit different in the comic than in the comics. Who are you expecting on the team? Like, okay, so we know we've got Kamala, we know we've got Kate Bishop,
Okay.
and we know, and they also mention Cassie Lang, Stature,
Right.
Ant-Man's kid. So who else are you hoping shows up on the team out of the people that we've seen?
Eli Bradley, who we saw in Captain America and with the Falcon. What is the?
Well, it
what's the name of the series?
ended being called Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
And the Winter
They
Soldier,
changed
right.
the credits at the end. Yeah.
Right. So that. So Eli Bradley is, a character who was in the original comic, Young Avengers. Young Avengers is a wild comic. There are a lot of tie-ins to a lot of characters that we've seen in the MCU and in the TV shows.
Right.
Because you have a young Kang who comes back in time to try to prevent his older self from taking over. Right? It's a wild trip. We have.
But some people think that Harley Keener, the kid who was in Iron Man 3 and also showed up at Tony Stark's funeral, some people think that he might be slotted into the Iron Lad spot. How would you feel about that?
I wouldn't like that.
No.
But then I would have to watch it and see if I like it. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't want that because I think the Iron Lad character means a lot to the comics, and they would have to do really good stuff with changing his background in order for it to work for me. So I'm not open to it, but I'm open to watching it.
Yeah.
There's so many people who had no clue who that kid was at Stark's funeral.
No.
Right.
There has to be a
Completely
reason. There has to be a reason that they brought him back in, and he's like the only one we've seen Tony Stark directly mentor in that way. Like obviously there was Spider-Man, but he's already his own thing. Yeah. Who else?
We have to go at some point. We have to talk about Wanda and Vision's children.
Billy Maximoff is cast in the Agatha Harkness show, whatever we're calling it, Darkhold Diaries.
Okay. I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
A teenage version.
Great.
Like
great.
18, I think. Yeah.
So he's a member. He's called Wiccan in the comics. And
so that Speed can't be far behind his brother.
Exactly. The children of Scarlet Witch and Vision. Yeah,
Kid Loki.
I can. Those
We saw Kid Loki in Loki, and we saw America Chavez, who can portal between dimensions in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Sounds like it could be useful.
Yeah.
And then I guess Yelena Belova, she's going to be too busy with Thunderbolts, but Riri Williams could be, and Scar,
Could be.
Hulk's kid,
the
that
Hulk's
we
kid.
met at the end of She-Hulk, and Love from Thor 4, and that
Well,
other
who
kid
I hope
from that
not.
one too, Astrid.
I hope not. To keep Love out.
What about Phyla from the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
Again, Phyla Gel, you know, she is Quasar in certain comics. So,
Right.
I mean, there's a whole lot of connective tissue going on with the characters and name dropping different things.
Yeah.
I just have to see. We all just have to see how they come across it. But I think Riri, like you said, America Chavez, the children of Vision and Wanda, the three who we already know of from this movie, Ms. Marvel, Stature, and Kate Bishop, can actually really do something around those characters, forming the next version of the Avengers.
All right, you guys are breaking my brain with this stuff.
No, it's a lot.
All these IP universes.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot of characters.
Walking tall.
I'm excited about Kamala leading it, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's
don't you
for
guys?
sure.
If we tell you Kamala's leading this group of kids, do you want to go see it? I mean, kids.
Yeah,
like,
and I
I'd be
like
very
Kate Bishop
happy.
too. Yeah.
I would be very happy,
Mhm.
even though I'm completely at sea.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Although I nobody said young T'Challa, and I definitely want to put in a plug. For him.
Yeah. I mean, he's on
No?
the young side, but I want him to stick around and grow up and fall in love with a young Aurora Storm, and we've been through this. Aurora Monroe.
Okay, can we talk about Kelsey Grammer now? Because
yes.
My wife turned to me and was like,
"Were you
that
surprised?"
Kelsey Grammer?
Yeah. Beast is back. I was so, I mean, I actually already knew about it before I saw it, but I was so like excited to see him. He is one of my favorite Marvel X-Men castings of all of them. So I was really glad to see him back.
As in Beauty and the
right, as in one of the blue.
I figured that was not the case, but
yeah,
the big blue guy.
He's a very strong, very scientist.
Yeah, see, he reminded me of Bruce Banner. So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
but he's fair. He's more like he's like Professor Hulk.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, he's more refined, and when he's not fighting, then he's very held together. He's Kelsey Grammer. He's free. Yeah.
So
will somebody start singing A Tale as Old as Time?
if we didn't already know that X-Men was on the slate, we now
we know.
A
right.
full, clear green light.
Yeah.
The light is lit. The lamp is lit.
I mean, they gave us Professor X, right?
Yeah.
And
playing with the X.
They gave us in Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness. We got to see Professor X. Now we get to see Beast, Binary, who's also, in comics, some comics is a mutant.
Maria Rambeau. Yeah.
Right. So it's very clear the direction that the MCU is headed. The mutants are on their way. What that means, I'm excited to see. Fantastic Four. We get all of these, spacefaring stories. I'm really just, it made me happy to see that end credit scene. It made me it made me really happy to see it because it's the culmination. As a fan, I've been wanting these characters to inhabit the same worlds, right? And now knowing that Deadpool potentially is going to end Fox's foray into this universe, and these characters can now inhabit the universe that we all love, is really refreshing, and it's really nice to see that play out. Like, okay, this is coming. You guys have been waiting patiently, and this is finally happening, and we're going to acknowledge that it's happening. We're not going to speak in innuendo and code. we're going to be very clear about it. And
Right.
which is what, again, people have been saying they've been missing from Marvel.
We need a strong direction. We need a clear, strong direction. Where are you taking us? Where's the story going? Yeah, that works.
And we have some support for my theory that Monica is a mutant because, okay, so Maria as binary in this universe doesn't have a daughter, which was sad for Monica. But she is a mutant, this version. You know, she's a version of Captain Marvel that got the powers of a white hole. And so if Monica's her daughter, I think, the mutant gene must be genetic. And so now Muniba Khan, mutant confirmed.
Who?
I don't know.
Sorry?
Kamala's mother.
Okay.
I want Kamala's mother to be a mutant.
Right. I don't know. I don't know.
No, but I'm excited. Do you think we're gonna see Monica in Deadpool 3?
Elysia, this is Sunday afternoon.
You're breaking Jean's brain.
Man.
Well, mine was gone a long time ago, so I'm going to put in a request for all the other listeners who might just have their eyeballs twirling right now. Can you put in the show notes suggestion for not the entire 3 series of each of these different characters, but some reliable place to read up so I know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
yes.
I mean, that completely.
Yes. I know a good podcast you could check in every once in a while that explains.
Well, I do. You see, so maybe this is a suggestion for your future podcast.
Yeah, we'll give you some. We'll get you some reading stuff. Definitely.
Give us some love and to set us up for when all these things start to happen.
Okay.
I just want to point out 2 more things. Okay. One is that this binary version of Maria was wearing both quantum bands. So that was interesting.
Oh, did not catch that.
Yeah.
Oh.
And also Beast referenced Charles, Professor X. So that means he's still alive. So that means this must not be
that's not the universe
838, which was the universe in Doctor Strange, because Wanda him there.
Yeah, so it's not the same universes. They're not.
Right. Yeah, and someone pointed out that there was music playing from the score of Days of Future Past. So this must be like the universe that we're going to see
thick there,
Deadpool 3 play out. Yeah.
What happens when a parallel universe marries a branching timeline?
That's what I was trying to
explode
before.
Yes. Everything goes kablawi.
All right. Well, we've got a couple pieces of feedback, so let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, I'm going to ask Marilyn to paraphrase her own email. We'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, so let's spend a little time with feedback. We've got a couple of emails. I did chat with Dork of the Ninjas. He wanted to get a voicemail in, but wasn't able to see the movie because of life reasons or whatever, but he's going to send one in later, so we'll hope to hear from his point of view. We've got Alchalant and Ken, but first in the queue was Marilyn. And I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling. This is a
it's
good
all
one.
Gold.
Yes.
Well, how many times did y'all say that you expected me to write in?
We did.
Lay some things down. So now you're complaining?
No.
Come on.
Lay it down. Lay it on us.
This is the Lorehounds. We go.
Lay it on.
We go deep.
We go deep.
That's right.
Deep.
So can you might as well just sort of summarize, paraphrase, sort of lead us through the. And this was for Loki, right? This is
for Loki, right? The finale and the show as a whole. My 2 favorite lines: "Most purpose is more burden than glory," and "There's no comfort. You just choose your burden."
Right.
And that's kind of the stuff we were talking about today too, with Carol and stuff. And I don't want to puff myself, but I was pretty clear from episode 5, if not even before, that Loki would have to be the one to resolve it all because he's a god. And the very first time when it came up that somebody should go and, do the mechanical magic to fix all this, Mobius first said, "No, Loki, you should do this." And Loki said, no way. Right? So it's part of his arc. He wasn't quite ready to do it at that point.
Right.
But I just said, who else can? I mean, that's ridiculous. And well, Sylvie certainly wasn't going to look.
She had negative motivation.
Well, and moreover, she never felt like a god in the slightest.
No,
Right.
It wasn't her perception of herself, except insofar as she could travel from apocalypse to apocalypse and survive. And you could also say that it was her intransigence that meant that Loki would have to be the hero. And he was the one who changed. It was his arc. Now, I think back to the 2012 Loki, who compelled a whole square full of people to kneel to him.
Yep.
And then I look at this Loki who is doing all that he can to save his human friends, and I'm just astonished. Just really,
what a
really rocked to see what he had been doing and where he arrived at. It was for me personally a weakness that so many things had to be explained or relied on prior knowledge. I mean, I had to listen to a superb podcast in order to understand it all. It's kind of like needing to read 2 books before you can begin to understand James Joyce's Elysia. Right? I mean, a little more explicit could have been useful. But on the other hand, that would have spoiled it for so many people who, knew what exactly was going on and could have written the scripts themselves. So. And, I'm with you, David. I would love for this to be Loki's final outcome. I think he's reached his place. He went through this arc. He developed his compassion. He's earned the right to be the king of stories. So maybe the other Loki variants can take up the other stories from now. Let this one remain. And Jean, you've got to be a true multiverse master if you can take all those endings and all their variety. I just want one ending, simplicity. And I also loved your insight. Loki needed to find love and acceptance of himself before he can freely sacrifice that self for others. And I frankly thought that this Loki was more human than Iron Man. Even though they both do this kind of sacrifice. But, Tony Stark spent his whole time trying to achieve that. The only exception, of course, Loki is a god, so he can continue on in sacrifice situations, which would kill humans.
He's Atlas.
And in effect, Loki has become his father Odin and his brother Balder the Beautiful and the Much Loved, which is really ironic because in the original stories, it was Loki who was responsible. He didn't actually kill Balder himself, but he was responsible for tricking one guard to do it and then refusing to mourn Balder afterwards so that he'd be forced to stay in hell. So Yggdrasil, the Norse legends, in many ways it was vulnerable.
The what?
It needed Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil. I actually spelled it out for you phonetically, so you can practice if you need to for the future. So it had to be attended to by others. It had to be watered from Mimir's cauldron of wisdom. And it had to be healed when the 4 deer were nibbling off its leaves, not to mention the serpents that were gnawing at its roots.
Right.
But it does represent sacrifice. Odin hung himself and sacrificed to himself 9 days on the tree. And then the twigs fell down and he had the runes, the magical system. Odin was much more of an ambiguous figure in the actual stories than he ever was in any of the MCU stuff, which is kind of interesting. Yggdrasil connects all of existence together, which to my mind is kind of like the timelines. Think about it. It's a symbol of interconnectedness, and a true king is connected to all peoples. Yggdrasil is an ash tree, and that's the same wood that Odin used to make his spear. Yggdrasil literally means Odin's horse, although horse can also be a synonym for gallows in this culture, which is exactly how it functioned for Odin when he hung himself on it. And of course, the Norns, who water it daily, are also the Fates. They know the past, the present, and the future, which is rather like knowing all the timelines, I think. And some of the ancient skalds and saga writers claimed that it was in Yggdrasil itself that a pair of humans sheltered from the chaos of Ragnarok to come forth once the earth had renewed itself and start repopulating it. So there is that sense of ending and beginning and that cyclical nature. And for my part, I think that Loki's face in the final season is compassion, which is the same lesson that Thor learned in his origin story film. The caring for humans beyond themselves, and that being godlike involves more than just being powerful, particularly in the sense of power over. And I'm going to transcribe those lines that you shared, Jean. I haven't had time to look at it, about the story and the king and all that stuff, but I'm sure there's a lot in there. Finally, on the theme of Loki being both daughter and son, let us not forget, Loki was the mother of Odin's 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, but that's another story.
So thanks, Marilyn, for that and for all the insights. I'm just left with, at the end of this process, when writers can write, we get this beautiful, deep richness to tell these stories. And I've been on this soapbox before, and I'll continue to be on the soapbox that human writers need to be writing human stories. We can use large language models to aid the process or speed or shortcut some stuff, but this sort of deep mythology and connectivity and telling stories from different mythologies, it is so uniquely, and for me to know that there were writers in a room, grappling with this stuff and looking up in the encyclopedia and calling up their people, their research librarians, and saying, "Now, what's the deal with this?" Like that, to me, makes a richness of the tradition of storytelling. This is our modern tradition of storytelling, is that they have writers' rooms and producers and grips and gaffers and all of this stuff that it takes to be there. So, and I love the fact that we get to pull these kinds of insights like you have from this Norse mythology. So
I am delighted to do it, and
thank you.
Glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, next up is All Chalant. All Chalant says, "Thanks for reading my emails from Loki. I appreciate it." Well, we appreciated you writing in, and we look forward to hearing more from you. He continues, "Even my stupid, crazy old Loki theory, it was just something super crazy that came across my mind, and I wanted to toss it out there. As an old Lost and Westworld fan, I can come up with some real bizarre theories, but Loki ended up being more of a character study than a mystery box, and this was much appreciated." I think so. I think we talked about this at the end of Loki, was that we were judging it slightly different. And yeah, I was going, I don't know what other people were doing, but I was definitely going in with a more mystery box mindset.
Right.
And I think as we saw, we did end up with a character story, which was nice. And I think that was refreshing, right?
Definitely.
I think so. Yeah.
All Chalant continues, "I did go see the Marvels, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was fun and silly and super cool to see some of the TV show characters finally on the big screen. Very cool to see a path forward for the X-Men and the Young Avengers. Triple thumbs up emojis." So yeah, it's there, right? We're seeing the tracks laid.
Yep.
"I like it quite a bit. It wasn't a masterpiece like The Winter Soldier, but it was very fun. I'm proud cat dad, so I thought the Flurkin sequence was very, very cool." Jean, you're not part of the club. You need some Flurkins in your life, my man.
No, I'm not. I'll be quiet.
Well, I think Brie Larson would appreciate your perspective. Since she's allergic to cats.
Oh, Chalant continues, "I like the lore tidbits we got about quantum bands and how they were used to create the jump points for space travel." Yeah, we didn't really talk about that, didn't we? That the jump points and the quantum bands are connected. So very important piece. "The primary mechanic of swapping places when using their powers was also very cool. I've seen some people complain that they didn't explain this swapping mech very well. And some people say that the swapping was used inconsistently, but I disagree. And I think the complainers weren't paying very close attention." Right, Elysia?
Yeah, well.
100%. Yeah, anyway, okay, moving on. We don't need to belabor disingenuous arguments. But yeah, I think it's right. It was there, and if you got it, you got it. "They did make a point to say that the swapping happened when they used their powers." Okay, so continuing with this line of thought. "At the same time, and even had a montage of them showing practice learning how to do it on purpose by using the powers at the same time." So, it's there. "In regards to how the swapping initially started, seems like the quantum band being used while Monica and Carol were investigating the broken jump points that were created by the quantum bands was enough of an explanation to satisfy me. They did like a 3-part split screen when this first happened, showing Kamala's band lit up while the other two were investigating the jump points. This was a good example of show, don't tell in storytelling that I appreciated.
Indeed.
100%.
Very detailed
Yeah.
watching.
Very good. And spoiler alert, broop, broop, lots of red siren flashing emojis here. Our first glimpse of the X-Men and the Young Avengers. Yay, it's about time. Multiple party emojis. Fun movie, not great, definitely not terrible. Kamala and Monica's acting performances were the highlight for me. 7.5 out of 10. Thanks again. Keep it up.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Oshalon. You guys have any thoughts or reactions to his email or?
He's a close watcher.
Yeah.
I'd give it an 8.5 personally.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought it was a little low.
Hi. All right, good. All right, last email is from Ken, who is one of our Patreon supporters. Ken says, hello. This is just a fan thank you email from Ken. Hello, this is just a thank you email to all the contributors on the Lorehounds. A fantastic listen always, and after a fantastic Friday with Loki, and then a very enjoyable The Marvels. Since I found your podcast and then falling in love with all your branched pods. I like it. The lore you go into is amazing and gives me whole new insights into my rewatching of everything. Personally, I don't get the negativity around Marvel. I always get something out of everything I watch from them. Just started reading Earthsea, looking forward to Beacon 23 when I figure out how to watch it or where to watch it more likely. Keep up the great work, one and all. Ken in Dublin, Ireland. Well, thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. That's fantastic.
That was very nice.
Good words.
Yeah.
That's a good segue to wrapping up our pod today. Elysia, Beacon 23, how's it looking? I've watched the first episode. I haven't caught up to the second yet. Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I think the first 2 episodes were like fun and surprisingly more grounded in the book than I maybe thought. But okay. I'm definitely looking forward to the whole season. Really glad that there's a second one. It would be neat if it was just like these 2 seasons were the complete story. And yeah, off to a good start. So episode 1 and 2 breakdown in the feed and in the book club, the book breakdown. And then we're going to be waiting and doing episodes 3 through 5 together after episode 5 comes out. And in the meantime, we're going to be doing our Dune novel breakdown in the Woolship Dust feed. Yeah.
And we got the news that Dune Part 2 movie has been moved up to March 1st.
Yes.
March 1st.
Yes. Yeah. Up from the 15th.
We're going to be... So in the new year, after Beacon's done, we're going to be completing the Dune series leading up to that just in time, I think.
Yes. Perfect. And when are you scheduled me for... I'm supposed to be on a Dune podcast.
So we're going to... In January, we'll talk exact dates, but then that's when we're going to do the Dune 1984 episode with the video games.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm excited for all things Dune coming. So deepen my own knowledge. Otherwise, in Lorehounds universe, Steve and Anthony have finished up their remake season. So they do movies usually on Properly Howard. And they had a series of movies that were all remakes. They finished that up. We are now, every Friday, we have a whole separate feed out. And we're dropping season 1 Severance Podcast. Steve and Anthony did a whole season on that. And then once we know when season 2 starts, hopefully it's going to be around January sometime, we're going to do full coverage of that week to week, episode by episode. It's going to be Steve, Anthony, John, and myself. So we're going to have a 4-way podcast on that. It's a whole separate feed. Make sure to subscribe to that. Get the season 1 episode podcasts in now. And there'll be a link in the show notes to that, or just search Lorehounds Severance, and you should be able to find that. Otherwise, for Lorehounds, we just recorded the holiday special. Well, okay, let me back up. The 1978 Star Wars holiday special is 45 years old this year. We didn't know that at the time. We thought, well, what are we going to do for the Star Wars Film Festival, where we watch all of the Star Wars films in story order? And we said, well, let's do the holiday special. Well, let's get Steve and Anthony on in that because that, it'll be fun to joke around with them. Perfect. When did we record it? We recorded it on November 17th.
On Life Day.
Life Day. When the special actually aired 45 years ago. And it turns out there's a book and a documentary that are being released all about it. So we're going to release that podcast, I think, on the 5th of December, which is when the main documentary, that new documentary, comes out. Otherwise, we just did a live watch of Solo, and so we'll have our podcast out about that. We have the third part of the fourth book of Earthsea, so Tehanu, chapters, 10 through 14, I think?
I think it's 11.
11 through 14, right. And we're going to record that in a couple of days from when we're recording this, so that'll be out before long. Elysia, I think you and I we're going to talk about Napoleon, the new Napoleon film.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Jean, have you been watching Monarch, Legacy of Monsters?
I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
So I'll probably pick it up sometime this week.
All right. Well, holler at me if you want to maybe do a one shot on it or something like that.
Okay, cool.
See.
All right.
Yeah. We've got to talk about our Marvel schedule too, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've got. Spider-Verse is out on streaming, and we've got What If.
Is it streaming yet, or is it still on video on demand?
It's on streaming now. It's on Netflix. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Netflix is gobbling up a lot. Yeah. What do you got?
And Rebel Moon.
Rebel Moon's coming.
Moon.
And when is Echo coming on?
January.
Which is,
right around
over 2 months away.
Yeah, right around the corner. This is exciting.
Right, I've got fire alarms going off.
Oh, you okay?
So I don't know what that's about. Hopefully I can edit that out. Otherwise, thank you all so very much. Elysia, thank you again for your excellent outlining work. Marilyn, what a pleasure. It was so great to
have you. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We had a terrific time.
So nice
I want to do this again. I want to sit down again. I have to figure out how to get you back somewhere.
Definitely.
Yeah, on the lookout.
Well, if you haven't read the Earthsea stuff yet, you might consider it.
Well, because we've got the Tales of the Tales of Earthsea.
Tales of Earthsea, and then The Other Wind.
The Other Wind, is it The Other Wind that's the collection of short stories?
No, other way around.
Tales
from Earthsea is
right.
Tales from Earthsea.
Well, maybe that's it's a thought for how we divvy some of that up, is to bring in some of the extended Lorehounds universe.
We will put a pin in it.
All right.
Good. All right, everyone.
Care.
Thank you all
guys.
very much. We'll see you the next time.
Enjoy your evenings.
Thanks so much, folks.
Higher, further, faster.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by the Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities.